Hi everyone, welcome to the final night of the DNC. This one, we're gonna be focusing on the Democratic presidential nominee. So without further ado,
please welcome the Democratic nominee for president, Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, thank you. Please.
I love that I've seen her do that before. Kamala is not a woman who wastes time on extended expressions of adulation, people. She's got places to be and speeches to give. Settle the fuck down and listen. It's Mamala time. I gotta say, I don't think I've ever seen politicians do this before. It's a novel approach. I like it.
So, America, the path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys. So, our mother, Kamala Harris, had one of her own. And I miss her every day, and especially right now. And I know she's looking down smiling. I know that.
Prove it. No, I'm joking.
At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close." But my father would say, as he smiled, "Run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you." From my earliest years, he taught me to be fearless. But the harmony between my parents did not last. When I was in elementary school, they split up. And it was mostly my mother who raised us. Before she could finally afford to buy a home, she rented a small apartment in the East Bay. In the Bay, you either live in the hills or the flatlands. We lived in the flats.
I just want to say that Kamala's father, Professor Donald, is still alive and not in ill health, and yet he is nowhere to be found during Kamala's acceptance speech to be the presidential nominee of one of the two major political parties. I normally wouldn't comment on this, but the degree of Kamala's achievement, coupled with his absence, is, I believe, newsworthy. Last we heard of him was in 2019 when she was in the midst of her first presidential bid. He made a comment after Harris responded to a radio interview question about whether she had smoked marijuana earlier in her life by saying, "Half my family is from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?" I remember this. Donald, her father, then responded in a statement to Jamaica Global Online, a news site in his home country, Jamaica. And he responded with, "My dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics." Donald wrote. Donald is a Marxist. "Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically dissociate ourselves from this travesty," he added. Kamala's campaign did not issue any comment in response. So that's the last we've heard of him. I don't think he approves much of Kamala's political journey. Anyway, just a side note, let's move on.
My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. And as the eldest child, I saw how the world would sometimes treat her. But my mother never lost her cool. She was tough, courageous, a trailblazer in the fight for women's health, and she taught Maya and me a lesson that Michelle mentioned the other night. She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it. Do something about it. As a prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And I would often explain this to console survivors of crime, to remind them, no one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. And every day, in the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge, and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people. And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. I stood up for veterans and students being scammed by big for-profit colleges, for workers who are being cheated out of their wages, the wages they were due, for seniors facing elder abuse. I fought against the cartels who traffic in guns and drugs and human beings, who threaten the security of our border and the safety of our communities. And I will tell you, these fights were not easy, and neither were the elections that put me in those offices. We were underestimated at practically every turn. But we never gave up. because the future is always worth fighting for. And consider what he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy. His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. Consider the power he will have, especially after the United States Supreme Court just ruled that he would be immune from criminal prosecution. And we know what a second Trump term would look like. It's all laid out in Project 2025, written by his closest advisors, and its sum total is to pull our country back to the past. But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. Well, instead of a Trump tax hike, we will pass a middle-class tax cut that will benefit more than 100 million Americans.
Look, I don't like either of these policies, to be honest with you. First, we've got Trump, the tariffs, non-targeted, and against every country Trump perceives as an enemy, which is almost all of them. This is a shit idea and will 100% cause more inflation. You use tariffs on targeted industries you're growing internally, not on fucking everything. Then we've got Kamala with the vague middle-class tax cut. Well, I just find it funny that her and Michelle spend an inordinate amount of time extolling the virtues of being humble, of persevering, of making do with little. And then she immediately turns around and is like, tax cuts for the middle class, baby. Shouldn't the middle class be grateful they're not the working class or homeless or something? Don't you need that money to finance the endless homes you rightly want to build? It all feels a little fake and hypocritical.
But tonight, in America, too many women are not able to make those decisions. And let's be clear about how we got here. Donald Trump handpicked members of the United States Supreme Court to take away reproductive freedom. And now he brags about it. In his words, quote, "I did it and I'm proud to have done it," end quote. Well, I'll tell you, over the past 2 years, I've traveled across our country, and women have told me their stories. Husbands and fathers have shared theirs. Stories of women miscarrying in a parking lot, developing sepsis, losing the ability to ever again have children, all because doctors are afraid they may go to jail for caring for their patients. Couples just trying to grow their family, cut off in the middle of IVF treatments. Children who have survived sexual assault, potentially being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. This is what's happening in our country because of Donald Trump. And understand, he is not done. As a part of his agenda, he and his allies would limit access to birth control, ban medication abortion, and enact a nationwide abortion ban with or without Congress. And get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds. one must ask, why exactly is it that they don't trust women? Well, we trust women. We trust women. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
She proceeds to talk about gun violence, immigration. She tries to thread the line there between being a nation of immigrants and secure borders. Then she talks about foreign policy. She will, of course, be very strong with Ukraine and NATO. She does, after all, serve under the protector of NATO, Joe motherfucking Biden. Then,
with respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
do you know, people, when the last ceasefire was achieved since Israel started bombarding Gaza last October? That was in November. Last fucking November. It's almost November now. We've been hearing these dipshits, mostly Joe Biden and now Kamala though as well, talk about tirelessly working for a ceasefire for the better part of a year now. As your mother used to say, Kamala, enough talking about it. Do something. I will say that the one good thing about this is that the crowd at the DNC is applauding wildly at the idea of Palestinians getting self-determination, and at least that is a good development.
I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump. Because, you know, they know he is easy to manipulate with flattery and favors. They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself. And as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand and I know where the United States belongs. None of us has to fail for all of us to succeed. And that in unity there is strength. You know, our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are. America, let us show each other and the world who we are and what we stand for. Freedom, opportunity, compassion, dignity, fairness, and endless possibilities. We are the heirs to the greatest democracy in the history of the world. And on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and all those who sacrificed so dearly for our freedom and liberty, we must be worthy of this moment. It is now our turn to do what generations before us have done, guided by optimism and faith, to fight for this country we love, to fight for the ideals we cherish, and to uphold the awesome responsibility that comes with the greatest privilege on earth, the privilege and pride of being an American. So let's get out there, let's fight for it, let's get out there, let's vote for it, and together, let us write the next great chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.
Ladies and gents, Kamala Harris. Look, I've been fairly critical of her speech up to now, but I've been doing that from the perspective of someone who wants the USA to do better. Now, in terms of how good a speech it was as a building block of getting her to the White House, it was a pretty good speech. It definitely gets the job done. I will say one thing. Thank God for Coach. Coach is the assurance I need for Kamala. Anything else I would like to add about the speeches we heard throughout the DNC? Bernie, of course, Saint Bernard on top. Obama, best orator by far, but I rarely like most of the notes he hits in his speeches. There's no doubt, though, that nobody delivers the notes like that. Hillary surprisingly had a good female empowerment speech. Walz, no comments needed. The man, the coach, the legend. So that concludes the DNC, folks. The Democrats are evidently coming out of it with the vibes, but we'll see how long they can hold on to them. All hail the coconut tree. See you soon, folks. Bye-bye.